Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mervyn Dinnan, and I'm welcoming you to the Gunnerstown podcast. This is my first time actually hosting the podcast, so please be kind to me in the comments. Well, we've all enjoyed a relatively comfortable, relaxed victory on a bank holiday afternoon, which is probably much needed at the moment. Plenty to talk about from today's game and plenty to talk about from events elsewhere, plus what's coming up later this week on Thursday. So I will, before I hand over to the others, it's a pubcast, therefore what am I drinking? I know Chris loves my craft beer. Today I'm drinking a Brewdog Jackhammer, which is 7.2% of Ruthless India Pale Ale, because Jackhammer is how Arsenal make me feel at the moment. And with me on the podcast today are Chris. Introduce yourself.
Hello, Merv. It's a hop house for me, sir, and I'm feeling fine and dandy on this wonderful Sunday afternoon, and even the sun has started to come out, so happy days.
It has indeed. And I'm also joined by Paul.
Hello, Merv. It's good to see you break your virginity, finally, after being on the show so many times. I hope we can make your afternoon relatively simple. And I'm drinking Stretton Wild Berry Gin with a Fitch and Leeds tonic, and it's delicious. It's my third.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear it. They've given us something to smile about today. In fact, the first comment we've got from Karen Singh is, wish we could play Newcastle every week. There are many seasons in the past, maybe not around the mid-90s when Keegan was their manager, but there are many seasons in the past when I've been feeling that. Right. So today's game, it looked relatively comfortable. We saw some players get some game time that we hadn't seen recently, and we're going to talk later about them and have they played themselves into the team for Thursday. But I suppose initially the hot take, Chris, what's your hot take from what you've watched this afternoon?
Can I go? I'm going to go a little bit of left of field here because you could potentially talk about things like Aubameyang and his goal and the importance of that. You could talk about rotation, bits like that. But my hot take is actually on Bellerin. Now, I've been in favour of seeing Bellerin drop out of the starting lineup because I think his form has been poor. But I tell you what, lads, I watched that today and thought I kind of fancy Bellerin at right back for the game on Thursday, and particularly probably more so after the Luiz injury, because, and I've been having a couple of debates with a few people on Twitter about the injury to David Luiz and what that does for Thursday. And clearly, I mean, we're talking about today's game, but I've spent the entire match thinking about Thursday, so it shows you how much of a meaningless game it was. But I looked at the performance of Bellerin today and I thought I'd rather see Bellerin at right back, Chambers at centre half, than I would see, now that Luiz is injured, than I would see Holding and Chambers. Because I think it just gives a bit more dynamism. And I thought Bellerin got forward well. I thought he obviously contributed towards the first goal, got an assist in there, ish, because Aubameyang messed up, obviously, and then El Nene's wonder strike. And I just thought we got in behind his fullback quite a lot, and he was good. So that's my hot take. It's a Bellerin hot take for me.
Excellent. How about you, Paul?
There was a comment that came up as I was having my, kind of gathering my thoughts towards themselves. And I was really impressed with Matty Ryan. I thought he looked great. He plucked a few balls out of the air. He did that one amazing save from that weird shot. I think it was St. Maximum, hit it off his own front foot. It looped over him. And it was almost Jens Lehmann-esque, like a, back monkey dive, and just managed to flick it over. And I think that goes in, and it's a different game. I think we might have got a bit of the jitters, and I think he was great as a sweeper. He looked really assured, and I think gives Arteta something to think about, because Leno hasn't been great, and the Leno shine is wearing off for me. I'm not crazy about him right now, but that's my hot take. Is Matty Ryan look very good?
Okay. My hot take, the first thing, because I make notes, as I think I've said before, the first note I made was, if there's a misplaced pass to find, Willian will find it. It's, again, absolutely shocking, I thought, today. Interesting point with the Willian thing, because I was out for a couple of beers with a Chelsea friend now we can sit outside pubs. Last
You've
week,
got a lot of Chelsea friends there, Murph. What's going on? Have you noticed that as well, Chris? Every week it's like my Chelsea friend, my this friend.
Do you have any? He does live in Fulham, though. To be fair,
I know. I do. Yeah, Craven Cottage is at the end of my road, so I was pleased for the locals that we got the win today. But I said to him, he asked me about Willian. I said, everybody. Yeah, I thought it was a good idea at the time, but he said no. He said, Willian divided opinion with us, even in the seasons when he was playing really well. Quite a lot of Chelsea fans just didn't rate him. So he's a player that seems to create this wherever he goes. But let's not talk about Willian today, because despite him, we won. And what do we feel? I mean, the first goal was quite early, and it kind of set the tone. He got Aubameyang. Elneny. He got Elneny on the score sheet for the first time in the Premier League, which I didn't believe that. Chris, what did you think about that?
Well, I think what's good about it is it's nice to score early goals first and foremost. Like we saw, I think early goals. Well, everyone knows early goals dictate the narrative of a game, and this goal really did spur us on for what was to be quite a comfortable performance in the end. I mean, it was a fantastic ball. Do you know what? Really, it's the bittersweet taste of today and today's game is the David Luiz injury, because what we saw with that first goal is just what David Luiz brings. Like, we get frustrated with him with his mistakes. We get frustrated with him with some of the silly decisions, the rash decisions he makes. But one of the things that he's good at is progressive ball distribution from the back. And it's just another different way in which we can unlock defences. And the way in which he clipped the ball into that right or our right side or Newcastle's left side channel was perfection. But also, again, just going back to my sort of Bellerin loving, because again, I haven't really had much of a Bellerin loving this season. I think he's a lovely bloke, but he hasn't really delivered at all this season. But today I thought he was very good. And he got into that position in behind his fullback. He's run inside and he's put a good ball back. Aubameyang probably, I mean, I was a little bit worried about how Aubameyang's going to react to that, and with the malaria and stuff like this. Obviously, it's impacted him, but obviously we can talk about the fact he scored afterwards. But it was a very clean strike from Elneny. Like, when you watch it in the slow motion replay, like we obviously in the UK have Sky Sports, the ball that was struck, I mean, he can't strike it much better than that. So, fair play to Elneny. And as Guna Dave said, who's from our parish, said in our WhatsApp back channels, does Elneny get a start on? Does he get a start on Thursday? Question mark. With Ceballos out. So we'll talk about that in a bit, I guess.
Yeah. No. It's a fair point, and quite a few players I felt out there were making a point for Thursday. I think one of the interesting things was that recently we've got used to the defence almost crumbling, just backing off and kind of not looking solid. And today it did. So, I mean, having taken that lead, and I appreciate that in the first half Newcastle didn't have a lot of attacking intent. But it just seemed very, very solid. What did you think, Paul?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was interesting to see, it was lovely to see Gabriel showing his best qualities, which is his anticipation. He's a very forward-thinking player. There was one run that he did, which was just great. It was just the slightest feint, and he feinted like 3 or 4 Newcastle players out of contention and found himself up, at the edge of their box. And I just found a lot of times that he had that very on his front foot defending, and it worked well for him. I think Newcastle were pretty shit, but I think there was one particular moment when Gabriel was left to defend everybody, and there was a break down the right, and he intercepted that, ran on to get the next ball, pressurized the guy back to do another back pass, pressurized him all the way back. So basically, single-handedly, he broke a Newcastle attack down. And those are the things that we like to see from Gabriel. And I think he and Luiz, as we mentioned before on this podcast, they've got a good understanding together. They seem to switch it out. They're covered for each other. They seem comfortable with each other, and the communication was good. So yeah, I felt like we had a solid defense, but at the same time, it's hard to judge their performance against the Newcastle side that kind of looked pretty zonked out today. I mean, they didn't, if there was one person on the break, that was it. It was either Almiron or nobody, or San Maximum and nobody. Callum Wilson stranded. So, from that point of view, I didn't feel,
Sorry, I was just going to, I'll echo that with you, Paul. And it was an odd Newcastle sort of setup, wasn't it? Because it was literally like they were just sitting back and like they were going to hit us on the counter-attack. But it wasn't like they were pressing bodies forward for the quick transition, which I found really odd. It's like, if you're going to sit back and try and rope-a-dope, so to speak, then surely what you do is you put your rapid players in positions further up the field so that you can just go front to back quickly. And they just didn't do it. It was weird. Yeah.
They played out a lot from the back, and which was surprising because when they did, lump a couple forward, that's when we were under pressure most. I mean, a quick ball over the top, and you got our defenders on their back feet, and we're not great on our back foot, like heading towards goal. You saw it against Villarreal in the week. When you're running at the players, they backed off a little. When you got past them, they seemed hesitant to put in a tackle. So I think Newcastle missed the trick there. I think they didn't really play to a game plan that suited them. I think they suited us today.
Yeah. Can I just, sorry, one more thing, Merv, and then I'll let you talk. I'm hijacking.
No, it's okay. It's a perfect host. I'm just letting the guests talk.
So I have SofaScore as an app on my phone. Check out some of these stats that I'm reading out to you in terms of out of 10. They do like a decimal point. Willian, 7.4. Martinelli, 7.3. Like, how, on what planet, what are they smoking over at SofaScore that they have Willian as a 7.4 when Martinelli, who I thought had a brilliant game, he had Jacob Murphy on toast all game. Like, he just basically got the ball, dropped a shoulder, went beyond him time and time again. And then with the second goal as well, an absolute peach of a ball, Merv.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think, Martinelli was obviously one of the big positives of this afternoon. And my next question was going to be, how do we feel about his performance? He really gets the wing play. Too often we have wide players, no names, who kind of just don't go wide. They cut in, they kind of, and maybe because they have a partnership with an overlapping player, maybe it would be different with Kieran Tierney in there, but he just seemed to know how to attack his fullback. And I think I know that we seem to have been managing his time, particularly in recent weeks since he's regained fitness. Paul, do you think it's beginning to pay off now that we were moaning a few weeks ago, why aren't we seeing more of him? And he kind of over the next few games, he's going to be the star?
Seeing more of Martinelli?
Yeah.
I think Martinelli, he brings an energy and a desire to go forward. He makes things happen. He shakes stuff up, and I like that about him. He was fairly solid in defence today. He put in, a couple of clearances, and in fact, most of our team seemed pretty solid under pressure at the back. Like the ball will come to them, and that we played out really well. We found gaps, a couple of hearts and moment things for me, and passing back towards the centre and then getting out. But going back to Martinelli, I'd like to see him on the wing. I think he's better on the wing than he is in the centre, and I would like to see maybe for this Villarreal. I would like to see Saka going back to left back. I'd like to see Martinelli play, and maybe Xhaka in the midfield with Partey. I think it would just bring more solidity, from Arteta tinkering in the last game. But I'm sure we'll get to that later. But I think Martinelli on the wing would be a good call, and Saka at left back, and then shift everything around a little bit might be
Yeah. Okay. So highlights. What was the highlight for you, Chris? Other than Hector Bellerin.
Yeah, so Hector Bellerin definitely won. I think what I was really pleased with was actually the way in which Arteta has game managed a lot of the players. So a lot of us were probably a little bit worried about him making this the squad selection. But today, the squad selection for me, I was a bit like, whatever. But I was really pleased that he just went, right, so Saka, I'm going to give a rest because we need him on Thursday. Partey, I'm going to give a rest because we need him on Thursday. Emil Smith-Rowe, I'm going to give him a rest because we need him on Thursday. The worrying thing for me is Kieran Tierney not even being in the squad. I wonder if he's even going to be fit, or is he fit and they just said, nah, we're just not even going to take you, but we're going to play you on Thursday. That's chucking in at the deep end. So that's a slight worry. But then the other side of that, the players that needed minutes, he did it. So Aubameyang, give him minutes. Odegaard, give him minutes. Luiz, give him minutes, which is frustrating that he got injured. But Gabriel, give him minutes. And I think even though Gabriel had a couple of moments in which I'm not sure, but I still think Gabriel had a decent game, like you said earlier, Paul. And also, he's just a better defender than Pablo Mari. And so for me, the highlight is that we got minutes into players that needed minutes. We rested players that needed resting. And we've come away with a morale-boosting victory, because although this game, I was a bit like, meh, and Paul and I were joking on WhatsApp because I was so enraged on Thursday that I was like, I'm not watching it, not bothering. No, that's it. I'm done with this.
And then I reminded him he's hosting today, and he's like, it doesn't matter. I'll just read the stats. I'll just wing it.
Interestingly enough, Arsenal had 19 shots to Newcastle's 5. They had 61 possession.
And then I turn it around and say, what do you think of the third goal, Chris? And you'd be like...
So for me, that was the big thing. The highlights are Arteta got it right in terms of the prep for Thursday. I know we're post-match podding on a Newcastle game, but that's what really, I was like, brilliant, top stuff, tick.
It was good. How about you, Paul?
Yeah, I think everything that Chris said pretty much is it. I think there was a lot of focus on Arteta after Villarreal and before. I think the things that he's been criticised of. I think today he kind of, he didn't double down on his stubbornness and tinkering and stuff. I think he just very pragmatic, solid managerial approach, and I think it would have helped for everybody: fitness levels, confidence levels. A bit of momentum going into Thursday, which is probably this might be the most important game, in our recent history, to be honest. I know we've said that a lot. We said that and obviously if we get through it, the next game against probably United will be our most important game. But this one really is, it's not in the bag. It's going to be a tough call. Thank God we're at home. I'm glad we got that away goal. But I think Arteta did everything right today to give us a platform to achieve what we need to achieve on Thursday.
I would say, Chris, I think in some respects you're lucky that it's probably one of the first times you felt a bit near about a towards end of season game where there's not much riding on it. Being the old git of the podcast, I had a few seasons back in the Terry Neal, Don Howe era at least, where it's kind of after mid-April, it's a bit of a chore to go because that you're just not going to see anything. The season's over, and it's kind of they're not even playing well. So I think it's Thursday night, which we will talk about shortly, is crucial, because I think I've said on a couple of podcasts recently, without Champions League money, we can't even begin to do the rebuild we need. We're not getting into the Europa League this season. I know we're back up to ninth, and I think 3 of the remaining 4 games are against teams towards the bottom. But I just can't see it happening. Just quickly, because we're feeling upbeat about it today. But yeah, every game there are lowlights. So I'll throw it to you first, Paul. What would you say was the low light today?
He's on mute. He's lost his sound.
He's on mute.
That's what I was asking. Oh. I muted myself because I've got a bit of a cough. But probably the low light for me, funnily enough, with all the love that Chris has given to Bellerin today, I couldn't help missing the Bellerin that actually used to, take the initiative. I found that there were a lot of times that he got the ball out on the right and it basically was a dead end and ended up going back around again, to the point where I was going to make a comment about it. So I was a bit surprised that Chris saw, something different today. But I realized that happens a lot in games, where you think, oh my God, that player was so shit, he was so terrible. And then somebody else goes, wow, that was one of the best games I've seen. You go, okay, well, it's perception, I guess. Somebody put here, you asked about my low light. Somebody put a comment up saying Xhaka was solid. Who's this? Jason Cook. Xhaka was solid. Not a fan of his, but after the booking, he did well. Now, I felt like Xhaka was lucky to be on the pitch. I think that second foul of his should have been, should have been a sending off, and that's 54th minute. And I think for the older players, the Ceballos and the Xhakas and stuff, to do that in the game, it's unforgivable. I mean, it's reckless, and that game could have ended up different if Xhaka had been sent off, which I think he rightfully should have been. I think it was as much a second yellow as any. So that's probably my low light, is that people are still prone to making those kind of mistakes, even though we got away with this one.
And he is a senior squad member, and we saw Dani Ceballos on Thursday on a yellow just stupidly pick up the red. So it's kind of, that gives the wrong message, I think. Was there a low light for you, Chris?
My low light is a bit sort of random. It's Don Goodman, the Sky Sports commentator, because he basically spent the entire game bemoaning anything. It felt like bemoaning anything we did, and linked to what Paul just said, right? So for me, Xhaka's 54th minute foul was probably a foul. It was definitely a foul, but it's one of those things that if he's not on a yellow, I don't think he gets a yellow. I'm not sure it's even a yellow. I'm not sure. It's probably borderline whether it's a yellow. So it's like 90% possibly, but there's that little bit of doubt. But Don Goodman was like, that should have been yellow. He's a lucky boy, blah, 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 blah. But he then didn't apply the same logic when Almiron, who tripped up, having been on a yellow in the first half, he tripped Ødegaard. I mean, again, accidental. It's still a trip, though. And if you tripped...
Half accidental, then, Chris. You could see there was a little tap out, and then he realized, shit, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So like Don Goodman, no, he didn't mean that. Oh, no, that's totally accidental. And then Dani Ceballos, who had been the culprit behind Almiron getting his yellow, and it wasn't a yellow because Ceballos has gone down way too easily. And I don't know about you guys, but to be honest with you, I'd be quite glad to see the back of him, to be honest. If when his loan expires, because I just don't think he's good enough for Arsenal, and it's quite good that we get to Julio Baptista and just send him back to Real Madrid. But Don Goodman was like, oh no, he was so effusive and saying, oh no, not at all, and then totally different sort of logic applied. And then there was a bit in the second half where Callum Wilson makes a slide tackle in on Gabriel, I think it was, and I had a discussion with Mark, obviously of our parish, Mark King, saying on Twitter, you can't give yellows for any kind of slide tackle, but in the modern game, if a striker goes to ground, if he makes a slide tackle, doesn't win the ball, takes the player, in this game today, even though people talk about, you're ruining football. Well, football's already ruined, and that would be a yellow, but yet nothing from Mike Dean. So from my perspective, and again, so relating to Don Goodman as my low light, Don Goodman didn't say a thing. Yeah, he was quite quick to just bemoan any kind of little touch on an Arsenal player or anything like that. I don't like players. Rubbish. Don Goodman in the bin is my low light.
I'm concerned about Danny. I mean, it's 2 seasons now that we've had him on loan, and there are games when I think, there's a footballer there, some of his little flicks and stuff, and other games I think, no, thank God he's only on loan, he can go back. And
I think, sorry, Merv.
No, I was going to say, with the Xhaka thing, it was an interesting point you made. Is that kind of a thing? It's a yellow, but it's not a second yellow, and I think I think referees might think, look, I've got to put a message out. He can't go around doing that all afternoon. But then I think it's am I going to send him off for that?
Yeah, especially early in the match too. Relatively, I think it's tough. I think I admire it when refs let the game move on, and as an Arsenal fan, I'm glad that Xhaka stayed on. But if he'd been sent off, when you see the replays, I mean, it's cynical. I mean, when we complain when City do that rotational fouling, where every member of the team takes a turn to do what Xhaka does, and in a way, the game has to be able to stamp that out. But I just don't know how or when it will happen. We get away with it. Teams get away with it all the time. It's and it ruins the game, really.
Can I just jump in on that one? So I think a way in which you stop rotational fouling, Paul, is to basically if you start to see that in a game, if you're a referee, if you start to see that in a game, you say, like Saka's a classic example. He constantly gets rotational foul. So the way in which you stop that is by saying, like after the third foul, you go to the captain and say, mate, I can tell that you're all just targeting him at different moments. And a really good example was when we played Aston Villa at Villa Park. Like they just rotational fouled all day. So after the third or fourth one of those, you go to the captain and say, look, it doesn't matter if it's your centre.
No matter who it is.
Who makes the next challenge. The next one that does a proper foul, like if it's just kind of like a nudge to nudge or it's a 50-50 ball, then fair enough. But the next one that does a proper foul, i.e. he's got away from you, you just pulled his shirt back or you just tripped him, whatever it is, I'm booking him. Doesn't matter if it's the first challenge. That's how you do it. But it's about communication. The referees have to do that from very early in the game, and they just don't. And I'm not going to get on my high horse about the PGMOL because they're an absolute disgrace of an organisation. I'm just going to pause and let Merv rein me back in.
I was sorry. Before you move on, just the point about the Ceballos thing is that, and I think this points to one of the reasons that we'd be fairly dismal this season is our lack of goals from midfield. And if you're going to have somebody in a position like Ceballos is, he's got to do better. He has to assist more, score more. You've got to get like 6 or 8 goals and 6 or 8 assists out of a person in his position. And if you're not getting that, I'm sorry, they just need to go. Otherwise, we're just not going to be moving forward at all. So as far as I'm concerned, adios, amigos.
Okay. I suppose the next thing we would normally talk about, we do have other things to discuss, so I'll quickly do this one, is substitutions. I mean, I won't talk about the lineup because I think everybody felt when it was announced, it was kind of the best he could do with an eye on Thursday and with what happened last Thursday to give minutes to players who needed it and to maybe get a game under the belt for players whose form hadn't been great lately. In terms of substitutions, do we think he managed them well or he could have done it differently?
I think today was pretty good, actually. I mean, sorry, Chris, you go ahead.
No, Paul, you get started. There was silence, so I just said, Chris.
Paul, crack on.
Yeah, so I think Chambers was a good replacement for Luiz because I think in Arteta's head, if you put on Holding or something and Holding gets injured, then now he's obviously protected the Holding Marie pair, and I'd be surprised if they don't start on Thursday. To be honest, they may not be as exciting and they may not be as progressive as the Luiz Gabriel one is, but I think that they've done a job. I think Marie has amazing stats when he's in the team. I think he's only lost 1 game or something out of 15 when he's on the pitch. I can see why Arteta might protect that central pair. So bringing in Chambers instead of maybe potentially damaging his Thursday starting lineup, I think was probably pragmatic. I didn't mind Pepe having a bit of a run around. Who else did we sub? Did we use our subs?
Yeah, Odegaard went off, and he.
Partey came on. Yeah, that's right.
And Partey,
and I was glad to see him get a little bit of time because Partey's been Partey. You say tomato, I say tomato. He's been struggling a little bit to find form, and I think today he was pretty solid. So the substitutions, I would say Arteta gets 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know what? Can I just echo that? So I thought the Aubameyang one probably could. I mean, I'm just a champion. I'm a child of the Championship Manager generation, so I'm absolutely terrified of players getting into the red zone and fatigue and all of that sort of stuff. And so I would have probably brought Aubameyang off a little bit earlier. I thought I didn't really understand. The only thing I'd probably say, a bit like, what's the point, is the Partey one, because I would just rather. It's a bugbear that I have, and this goes back to like even Arsene Wenger used to do it. Like back in the day, you used to get like a Champions League game where we're already qualified, and he'd bring on like an Henry, or he'd bring on like a Fabregas or whatever it is, and you'd almost be like, "We're qualified, just play a kid, just chuck an Aziz in." We've got to start seeing them because let's be honest, we've got to start offloading some of the current Hale End, some of the Hale End lots, so that we can make some money, so that we can actually like invest in the squad in the summer.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. I mean, on Arteta's, I suppose on his side, he's got to try to win all our remaining league games, and in the hope that to cover himself for the Europa League. So, in that respect, I'm guessing it's rather than rotate, experiment, and give some minutes to a youngster, he needs to try to win the games. But we're getting quite a few comments. In fact, Olaf, who's often on this podcast with us, has been in the messages telling us what Mikel Arteta's been saying. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang said in the last 5 minutes he was dying a little bit, but to tell the truth, he felt good for most of the game, which is great. Steve Bruce seems unhappy that Fabian Schär's red card. You're not allowed to tackle anymore. Well, Steve Bruce did plenty of those, I remember seeing. Okay. Let us move on, because I know Chris is only with us for a limited amount of time today. I suppose there's three more things to discuss, and the first is Thursday night. So I'm going to do a kind of, in terms of the players we saw today, who do you think deserves a place, or at least to be strongly considered for a place? And I'm going to go player by player. Hector Bellerin.
Yes.
I wouldn't play him on Thursday, no.
So, Paul, who would you play at right back?
I'd play Chambers. Yeah.
Okay. Originally, it was going to be Louise, but obviously we'll take that off because I doubt it's going to be fit. Right. There were two Gabbies out there. Gabriel in defence. Would you play him Thursday or stick with Mari?
Gabriel. I'd play Gabriel.
Yeah, I think it's about partnerships. Gabriel and Holding have never worked for me. I would play Holding and Marie.
Chambers and Gabriel, though. Chambers and Gabriel are better in outright. Just saying.
Yes. How do you feel about that?
No, I think if we, we'll move on to like what my idea for the left back would be, if that's the next question, would be Saka. In which case, I think that I think with that kind of creativity, I think it might be better to have something more solid than a Gabriel who's also a bit, headstrong and forward thinking. I think we need a good base, and then we can have Saka, and Chambers kind of playing as wing backs, which they both do well. Chambers has put in some good crosses, better. I mean, Bellerin got the assist today, but I think Chambers puts in better balls than Bellerin has recently.
Yeah.
And I think he's got more to his game. You saw him playing that kind of centre-back role. So if there's a kind of a, if we're going to pivot around, if Saka's going to go forward, I think Chambers is a better person to then slot into that right-back role in a 3 than Bellerin is. But that's just my thought. Chris?
Okay. Gabby. Gabby Martinelli.
Do you know what? Sorry. Yeah. So just on what you just said, Paul, I kind of see what you're saying there. I'd probably rather give but the thing is, it's a semi-final, so I don't know. I'm a bit torn. But the idea of Gabriel at left back and then moving Xhaka into central midfield, if we don't have Tierney, is a bit more palatable. So I don't want to see Chukwueze literally driving at Gabriel. I feel like, at Xhaka, because I feel like Gabriel's at least got a bit more pace to contend with him as a centre half, and he's quite good at one-on-one duels. So I'd be thinking about that, definitely. And in terms of what you just said, Merv, with Gabby Martinelli, I wouldn't. That's just because, not because of anything. Martinelli was brilliant today, but we've got Smith Rowe, we've got Ødegaard, we've got Saka. I'd be playing those three behind an Aubameyang, assuming he's all right. That would be my preferred choice. But also, you've got Pepe, who's in form as well. So not because Martinelli has done anything wrong. It's more, I just think there are other players that have played more games and are in form.
Okay. Matt Ryan. Should he start on Thursday?
I'd play him. I would. Sorry, I would. I think he's got more to prove. Leno made some amazing saves against Villarreal. I don't know. I just don't think Leno's future's at Arsenal. I don't think he's committed, and I think it bugs Arteta.
Possibly. There was hints about that, wasn't there, and what Leno said. I would still stick with Leno, only because there's not enough sample size with Ryan in terms of his distribution. He came and he collected plenty of balls today, and he was very good, actually. And that was really, really good to see. But his distribution, I don't know enough about it. So it's more the devil better the devil type stuff.
Yeah, and we're up against the Villarreal. So, I mean, Newcastle are a traditional lower half Premiership team at the moment, where it's long balls, high balls, throw it in the box, see what happens. Where I don't think Villarreal will play as much like that. El Neni, has he obviously Ceballos won't be playing, so somebody needs to start alongside Partey. Now it could be Xhaka if we bring in Saka, say, at left back, or do you think El Neni should? Paul?
I don't think I would start with El Neni. I think El Neni's as solid as he is, I think that we've got to be on the front foot at home. I think we need to really dominate, and I don't think El Neni's the kind of person. If we struggled with the kind of players we struggled with away, with 15 creative players up front and none of them really able to score, I don't think that El Neni's the person that's going to make the difference. Which is why I would argue against you, Chris, in the sense that I can see Saka, Pepe, and who was the other person you said, Smith Rowe. I can see those guys as in support of Aubameyang, but to be honest, I don't remember the last time any of them really scored. They're not great goal scorers. I don't think they're and we struggled on Thursday to find goals with those false 9 and the false 10 and all those creative players. I think Martinelli has an eye for goal, and I think him on the wing and Aubameyang and letting them swap around, because neither of them are really great at holding the line. I think if they each had half a game moving in and out, it would create some confusion for Villarreal to defend, and also help each of them because they're both good coming off the left. So I would just like to see Martinelli squeezed in there somewhere, and then somebody's going to have to drop out for that. And so therefore, I don't think there's room for El Neni. I don't think he would bring the creativity we need.
Okay. I was going to ask Willian, but I think I can guess the answer to that one. But you never know that.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if Chris. I don't know how much longer we've got Chris for on this one. So
I can do one more. I can certainly just before I have to disappear off, and my wife will be reprimanded for chucking somebody arriving in my house at the last minute, but to collect something. But on Willian, I wouldn't even let him touch the coach. As in the bus, not the bus, not the coach.
No, he can touch the coach, but he just can't get on the bus.
The idea of Willian just going around just stroking Arteta's face just so he can get a place in the team. Just to deal with. No, I'm going to love you and leave you guys.
Okay, Chris,
all right,
it's been great to have you on board, and Paul and myself will continue this because I think a lot of our listeners will probably have seen the scenes during the Sky commentary that were going on at Old Trafford. And I want to get your take, because I was on the podcast with you after the Everton game, Paul. You were very passionate about Arsenal, about our fans' protest that night and Kroenke out and stuff. Do you think that what's happened at Old Trafford today is going to lead to a slightly different way of protesting?
Yeah, it was interesting that, because I saw a still, or maybe it was a short video of a steward actually letting the fans onto the pitch at United, which I thought was, there was a comment about give that man a statue, when the Glazers leave, you got a statue of a steward opening a gate to let people. I mean, once they were on, I couldn't help looking at them and being, thinking back on the Capitol riots and these people inside the US Capitol, unmasked, on camera, just basically performing these criminal acts, and just shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, there was a kid climbing on the back of the goal on the netting. It's just the one guy trashed a tripod from the media stand, and you just got to know, protests. I understand the protests, and I support the cause. I think greed and football ownership need to be addressed. But I just felt sorry for those guys, because I think basically they might have fucked up their ability to go to games ever again, because you're on camera now doing this kind of stuff, and that made me sad, because I want the fans to be able to have their voice and say what they need to say, but it's tough when they're on when they're on the pitch I think it might backfire. But I completely 100% support them. I think it's great. I think that a lot of them were inspired by what they saw Arsenal fans doing at the Everton game. I think I saw Liverpool and United fans saying, good on the Arsenal, on the Gooners for showing, how to do a protest, and I think continual pressure against whether it's the Glazers or Fenway or, our owners, Kroenke, and I'd like to see the pressure just continue, because I think as one football United supporters fan groups, I think that we just need to keep passing the baton and just keep the media's attention on this issue, so that the government can step in, because I think that's where the solution is going to come ultimately.
Yeah, I think I seem to be on twice at the moment. I'm not quite sure how.
You seem to be on what?
Twice. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, can see you.
Oh, fine. Good. I think entering the ground, even if the steward has let them in, is problematic. It changes the protest to something else, and you likened it to Capitol Hill. Mm-hmm. I mean, I personally wouldn't want to see our fans replicate that on Thursday. If I'm honest, it's a hugely important game, and I want the team to be mentally prepared and not kind of sitting in the hotel, having the kickoff time put back and stuff. And that's just being selfish, I suppose. But also, I think Arsenal and Arsenal fans have all done it. This kind of thing, very professional, not professional, but have conducted themselves well when it comes to protests. I'm old enough to remember the Arsenal Action Group, and I went to a couple of the meetings. So I'm expecting to see protests, but I personally, I don't want to see them kind of almost invade the ground. I don't know what you think, Paul.
Yeah, there's a comment here while I was talking. Kieran Delaney here says, "What are you on about, mate? Fair play to those people passionate enough to make a stand." Don't get me wrong. I completely support 100% what the fans have done at Old Trafford. The pitch invasion thing. My only comment was, I'm not going to judge it good or bad. The guys are there; they do stuff in the heat of the moment. My only comment was that at the end of the day, these fans, a few of them could have, face severe consequences for the rest of their lives. They may never be allowed into a ground again. You know what I mean? If they get identified or whatever. And I think that would be sad, because it's like, I don't want to see that. So I think maybe I'm advocating people wearing masks or something. And as far as what you just said about whether we should do a pitch invasion on Thursday night and disrupt that. I'm not sure. I think I agree with you. I'm not sure I would like to see that so much resting on the game. But at the same time, if you're gonna try and make a difference and make an impact, then you've got to be ruthless, and you've got to disrupt, and you've got to make impact where it counts the most. And so in that sense, perhaps disrupting Thursday night's game would be the best time to to make a stand and do that. I just personally, I'm not sure I would. I don't know. The jury's out on that one.
Okay.
That's kind of where I'm at on that thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough one. I don't know what it would take to get either the Glazers, the Kroenkes to sell. I mean, those are the two clubs where fans seem to think there's a chance of forcing the owners to sell. But I don't know, I don't think that's in their mindset of American sports, those owners.
Dave has a friend, Dave Seeger, my Gunners Town partner, who's often on this podcast. He has a friend who's written, I think it was an article just came out recently saying that, I don't know what his sources are or how reliable it is. He seems pretty reliable. That basically Arsenal has been privately, it's been known that, the Kroenkes are open, to selling it. Now, I don't know how that stands in the light of what happened with the European Super League. And it's interesting with the Spotify, with Ick throwing his hat in the ring with a couple of, invincibles behind him. I think that's in fact, you and I think it was you, me, and Olaf were on the podcast on Thursday, and Olaf was saying, "Oh, it's not going to happen. Where are you going to find a billionaire that wants to buy the club?" And it's interesting that, like, literally the very next morning, or maybe even while we were speaking, he threw his hat in the ring. So that's one way of changing it. But I think, and the Arsenal supporters trust Tim Payton and Akil Vies and all the people that did an amazing work in media over the last week. And we've been passionate on the ground and social media as supporters. What they've been doing is meeting with Keir Starmer and Boris Johnson and talking about changes in the laws regarding football ownership, and the 50+1 models, different models, giving some protection to the clubs as institutions. And I think that's probably, if we can keep the pressure up like United fans did today and like we did on last Friday, I think if we can keep that going, there would be there could be some kind of commission of inquiry into figuring out how to not let this happen, and that may provoke those owners who are looking for a more guaranteed source of making billions off of us. They might say, listen, fuck it, I can't stick around. I'd rather sell. Or if they're forced to sell 49% of their shares, it may not be as appealing to them. So there's these two prongs that need to happen at the same time. And if they do, I think, there might be some real change, which I'd like to see. And I'm sure you would too. Yeah,
I would. As I think we said on that podcast you referred to, the thing with American owners, the Kroenkes moved the team from St. Louis to Los Angeles. They didn't care about the protests in St. Louis. They moved them to Los Angeles so that they could play in a stadium that the Kroenkes built and owned, and therefore kept all the receipts from, and could host a second team. So I don't know if they would. I would like them to, but it's kind of, we don't know that if Daniel Ek will suddenly invest a load of money in the team and will go out and say, here's £500 million, go and sign a title winning team. I don't think that will happen. And so I think we need to be careful. And my concern is that as fans, and I suppose it's kind of thinking historically to previous protests back in the 80s and stuff, we're going to almost begin to push ourselves into a way where, for example, we want to lose on Thursday, because if we get into the Champions League, it's a positive for the Kroenkes. They're less likely to sell, and I don't want that, because that then becomes self-defeating.
It's always a tough situation. I always liken it to like to working on a moving car. So if you're in a race in a car and you're racing around the track, trying to fix something while you're in the middle of it, or to influence it, is a little bit like leaning over and working on a moving wheel, and trying to change the wheel while it's going round and round. Like, it's going to fall off and everything's going to fall apart. So it's really tough. I think well-aimed protest is always good. I think even when it was down to just booing players on the pitch, during the AWB, the Wenger out and the AWB days, that kind of thing. It needs to be focused. I think whatever energy is directed towards fixing something, it needs to be focused on the thing that's broken. And if we don't want to affect the players who are representing us in trying to keep the car moving and to trying to get us into the Champions League, which would be a better thing than us not being in the Champions League. So if we're going to do something that is going to affect the people that we don't want it to affect, then we've done the wrong thing. I think that we need to be very specifically focused on making change happen where it needs to happen, and not creating too much collateral damage around the people on the pitch, the people that have worked for the club, loyal servants that do their best day in and day out and have proved themselves to be amazing servants to Arsenal and the cause, those are not the people that we want to affect, So I think it needs to be kind of clinical, precise, surgical, so blanket protests that ruin our chances to get into the Champions League. I'm kind of just crystallizing my thoughts as I speak, but I don't.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So that's where.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of the podcast. One thing I'd like to ask you is, what do you think will happen on Thursday in terms of the game?
For the Prague away game, I was terribly nervous. I thought after we'd lost the first leg, I thought our hopes were slim. And then we put on a performance that was just, staggering. It was as good as any I've seen in ages, I'd like to think that Arsenal can produce that instead of the second round against Olympiacos that we produced to get knocked out last season. I think in my heart of hearts, we can get through. And then we've got another huge mountain to climb if we end up playing United, because I think they're in form and it's going to be a tough game. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. This game really, really is, it's so important. And I just hope that, the players are up for it. Because at the end of the day, if they're up for it, we can beat that team every day of the week. I think we're better than them. So I'd like to think that we can win maybe 2-0 and go through. If we can stop them from scoring an away goal, that'd be great.
Yeah, I the eternal optimist. I believe we'll win. I think we'll win 3-0, but I'm sure once I get to Thursday evening, it'll be 1-0 will be fine.
Yeah, that would be good. Maybe and because it's the anniversary of our historic double. If these players have any sense of history, maybe they'll rise to the occasion because, it's an important time for Arsenal. We've got some great articles coming out. I've edited them and they're being published from Monday onwards because we had them planned before the media blackout. But Gary Lawrence, who's an Arsenal fan and has been around for a long time, he's written a 4-part series remembering the double from 70-71. And it's really amazing. It's so visceral, like when you've got somebody who is there and talks about those players and the build up and how it all went down. It's going to be great. So look out for those on Gunners Town.
I'm looking forward to reading them. I was kind of there. I was at Wembley. I wasn't at White Hart Lane. I was far too young to go to away games. But what I would say is tomorrow, for any Arsenal fans that don't know, is the 50th anniversary of the first time we won the league at White Hart Lane. And it's a bank holiday Monday, and I expect there's going to be lots of stuff on Twitter, Facebook, with clips of Ray Kennedy's goal and the Arsenal fans swarming on the White Hart Lane pitch. So look at it, consume it, share it, make tomorrow a tsunami of Arsenal activity on Twitter.
When does the blackout end? At 3:00, right?
I think so, yes.
So from 3:00 onwards, do your thing.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes. After the blackout, make it a tsunami of Arsenal memorabilia from 71. And hopefully we'll do it all again on Saturday after Thursday.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Jeez, but let's get through Thursday, right?
That's true. Oh, well, thank you for joining me, Paul. And thank you for joining me, Chris. And good luck and have a good rest of bank holiday to all you Gooners out there.
And all of you that participated in the comments and stuff, thanks. We really appreciate your input. So, that's it. Good luck for Thursday. And thanks again for having me, Merv.
You're welcome.
Cheers.